out, and it's always awkward. Self-clarification. Sometimes, was I right, or somebody thinks something about you and that's not true. So, that's not what I meant. Blah blah blah. Self-validation. Hey, look at me. Look at what I did. I won this award. I won the award for the most professorial person in this office right now. When Steve was in here, that wasn't the case. Identity management. Obviously, we disclose certain things and not other things, so we can manage how people see us. Relational management and enhancement. Again, when we are in our relationships with whoever, we let people know certain things about us, and not other things about us. And again, we always have these boundaries, and boundaries are constantly, in flux and problematic in lots of different ways, and people step over the boundaries, but who cares? But sometimes people care. But in any case, how we manage our relationships is in large part in the processes of what we let people know about us. But there's a lot of stuff that indicates that as we know more about people, our relationship tends to grow. It becomes stronger. It depends on the situation, obviously, but if you don't hardly know anything about somebody, you're not going to have some sort of big, huge relationship with them. Excuse me, I'm all choked up about this. Social control is another thing. So you control what people know about you. So you have control over the situation, whatever. But you can also manipulate by self-disclosing maybe things that aren't true, but also you self-disclose things about other people. I mean, there's some dark bit to the processes and practices of disclosure. Next slide here. Are there general rules for self-disclosure? Yes, most of these are cultural, and every sort of culture or whatever is going to have their own little rules and regulations. But this is what the research generally says within our Western society. We usually only disclose personal information to people who are important to us. So if you're not going to I'm not going to go over to El Cheapo's right now and just start chatting somebody up and say, hey, something as innocuous as, did you realize that when I was when I was a kid, I had an invisible friend. I had several invisible friends, and I think they showed up to Trump's inaugural. But you're not going to disclose stuff to people that you don't care about. So the person is usually important to you in some form or fashion. Are the amount and type appropriate? We tend to not want to nor expect too much self-disclosure too soon. We all know those folks who, once we meet, 10 minutes into the conversation, you know everything about that person, and boy, is that uncomfortable. But generally, it depends on the context, right? Obviously, we tell our doctors pretty much everything under the sun, and so it all sort of depends on the situation. But usually, not too much too soon. And we also think about the risk. Is the risk of bearing our souls, or risk of offering certain information, is it reasonable? Or is again, going back to sort of the risk-benefit idea, is the disclosure relevant to the situation? We all know people who you might have some sort of talking about the weather, and somebody just says, hey, speaking of the weather, I have this weird rash. Do you want to see it? Which is not, well, maybe the weather causes rashes. I don't know. I don't have a rash. But I'm just saying that sometimes folks will just throw out something when it's not relevant. Will the effect of the disclosure be constructive? For instance, if you're trying to maybe get somebody to talk about something, if you disclose it, will they disclose it? Will it be constructive or not? Will it be destructive? Is it clear and understandable? So are you offering clear information that's not terribly vague? And all this stuff, we are sort of talking about personal information. I mean, everything can be disclosed, but I mean, it's not like, people are going to go crazy if I say, oh, I grew up in Oklahoma. Really? Wow. Sometimes. Well, actually, it depends. I mean, I've talked to Dr. Burke every once in a while. I remember when she first moved here, and folks, called her a Yankee because she's from Maine. I mean, that can be problematic. I mean, it's just sometimes that becomes a big self-disclosure. I'm not from South Carolina. Oh my goodness. And again, is it reciprocated? That's the last thing. So oftentimes there is this rule or this tendency that if we share something, that the other person or persons sort of share the same thing back. It could be as simple as, "Hey, my favorite singer is Corey Hart, and I do wear my sunglasses at night." And then somebody could say, "Oh, well, yeah, my favorite singer is Beyonce." Or my favorite singer is Barry Manilow. When I was a kid, I'm self-disclosing. My mom loved Barry Manilow. We watched all the Barry Manilow shows and stuff like that. I still have vinyl Barry Manilow. But when I was a kid, his song, "I write the songs that make the whole world sing." I remember being so flummoxed when I was a kid because I was thinking that he had the capacity to write all the songs, like every song that ever existed. Barry Manilow wrote that. I was really impressed. Wow, that's cool. Barry Manilow rocks. No, he doesn't really rock, but it looks like he made it. Okay, it looks like we made it to halfway through this, all this stuff, because now the rest of the chapter, my little venture into disclosure, moves back to decisions on criteria for privacy disclosure. So back to the communication privacy management and its impact, or this relationship to self-disclosure and social networking sites. And I'm actually going to leave that for later, probably tomorrow, just so I don't completely and utterly bore you with stuff today, and I have to run to some other stuff. But more from me later. But again, big picture, privacy, thinking about disclosure and all that type of stuff within the context of computer-mediated communication and social networking sites. Very important. And allow me to disclose that I'm trying to think of something. I got that monkey in Mexico. Because I got it in Mexico.